gonna be talking about in this video is, excuse me, square roots and cube roots. When you get into your algebra class, whether that's college algebra, pre-algebra, algebra 1, what have you, you're gonna start to definitely be asked to take the roots of numbers. The cube roots, square roots of numbers. Excuse me. So that's what we're gonna talk about in this video. It's some things that I think are worthy of talking about before we talk about square roots. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna make any assumptions as to what you know. The first thing about square roots is that they apply to numbers. Meaning, because again, I know if you like me, you real imaginative. Square roots, you can't take a square root of a tree, cars, you know what I'm saying? None of that, Square roots apply to numbers, so you can clear up some brain space, basically. Not having to think about nothing else but numbers. When you think about square roots, you think about numbers. So just lock in on that concept, right? That's the first thing. The second thing, excuse me, is that, so we talking about numbers. We know that we focus in on numbers. Okay, numbers. Oh, cool. Before we talk about taking the square root or the cube, we're going to say square for right now. Because don't get married to that square. We're going to put that on there in a second. You need to know, or you might want to know, you might like to know that you can turn any number into a square. That's the thing. Real quick, how do you do that, Nephris? If any number that has an exponent of 2 is a square. So, for example, if you got 3 with an exponent. Now, if you don't know what an exponent is, go watch our video in the algebra section as to what powers and exponents. They're the same thing. But so any number that got a power of 2 is a square. That's what the whole thing is. And the square just when it's multiplied by itself. 3 times 3, that is 9. So I want to just reiterate again, square roots are about numbers, and that's cool. Secondly, you can turn any number into a square. So now that we got that kind of laid out, let's talk about square roots. What is that? What's that about? What's all the fuss about these square roots? Well, essentially, when you look at this thing right here, I said, look, you can turn any number into a square. And you can do that. Let's say you turn a number into a square, but then you want to figure out, or you want to basically reverse that. We'll put it that way. You want to find out what number that you started with before you had a square. That's what the square root is, okay? So, for example, like I just did it, but I erased it. Somebody, you might ask, this is the square root symbol. That's what it looked like. So we got the square root. This is what the symbol is of 9. And I'm going to do this for y'all too, just again, so we're going to get into this concept. Get used to it. Now, when you got a square root, there's always a number supposed to be right here. Right? Now, again, a lot of folks assume that you might know that, but I'm not going to make no assumptions right now. You need to know that the square root is when it's a 2 right here. Because you can have stuff like this, which is the cube root. This is basically called an index number. We'll talk about that at another point. But I'm saying, don't get, you need to know that that's there. And also you need to know that it's there, and also that it can be, you can have something like this. That's like the quintuplet root, some shit. I don't know somebody let me know what that is. But the index can be whatever. The square root specifically is when the index is 2. Alright. So the square root of 9 is 3. The square is, again, because listen, listen, the square is the number. When 9 is the square. I know, but we're not talking about like this, because we're not talking geometry yet. Geometry is shapes and spaces and form and stuff like that, which we will talk about. But right now we're talking about algebra. Once we get into geometry, you'll see why I'm saying, why is it not a triangle? I know, like it's a lot of other questions that we could get into. Like why is it not a triangle? Why ain't it a pentagon? Nothing like that. Why does it have to be a square? We'll get into that in the geometry. But I need you to just walk with me during this particular thing. Don't get ahead, don't get behind. And just we'll get to that at a later time. But so 9 is the square. So the square root of 9 is 3, because when you multiply 3 by itself, you get the number 9. Let's do another example. You're gonna leave that right there. Erase this. What's the square of 12? I don't know. We'll talk about estimating stuff like this later on. But not every number is a perfect square. So again, this is just information that of course you'll run into in your class. 12 is not a perfect square. Well, nothing times itself equals 12. So let's try another number. Let's do something like 16. Well, 4 times 4 is 16. So the square root of 16 is 4. And when you ask to find the square root of 16, you would say that it's 4. And you can do this for any number all the way up to a million gazillion. Like it don't, you know what I'm saying? It's the same. The principle is the same. You know what I'm saying? So we gonna, you know what I'm saying, go on there. Now, like I said, you don't want to get mentally married to the idea of that square root, because it goes beyond that. You can turn the number into a cube as well. That's the third thing that I need you to just know. I'm not saying memorize this, but just understand the principle. Don't memorize nothing that don't memorize nothing that I ever tell you. That's what I tell a lot of my students that I tutor. It's not about memorization. But you can turn a number into a cube as well. So you need to know that. And what is that? A cube is basically when it's an exponent of 3. So 2 to the third power. So this is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So you might be asked something like, what is the cube root of 8? And that would be 2, because 2 multiplied by itself 3 times is 8. Let's do another example of a cube. Let's do 3. Or let's do something like this. Let's do it like this. What is the cube root of 125? Now, take a second to kind of think about what we've been talking about. What's the cube root of 125? Excuse me. I'm gonna get a little bit of my water. So, what's the, first of all, so obviously what we can say is that this number done been turned into a cube. So, because again, we're finding the cube root. You can't find the cube or square root if it hadn't already been squared or cubed. So we know already that this number done been cubed. So we gotta find what number that we started with to make the cube. So that's just whatever we multiply 3 times to get 125. And that would be 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. And then you multiply that by 5, which is gonna be 125. So the cube root of 125 is 5.